Hey guys, welcome back to another video. Thank you so much for joining us today. Thank you so much for joining me today here on this corner of the internet. My name is Jaya. For those of you who are new, welcome. I talk all things books, and I also like to throw in a little bit of randomness every once in a while, whether it be travel vlogs, food, whatever it might be. But 99% of the time, we're basically talking about books because I'm obsessed with them. So if you want to be part of our bookish obsessed community, definitely consider sticking around and hitting that notification bell and subscription button if you are interested in continuing to be a part of this lovely bookish community. For those of you who are returning, welcome back, and thank you so much for joining me today and for being here with all of your love and support. It means the world to me. That being said, we are going to be doing another series review today. Hey, yay, yay, cheers. Anyways, sorry. That being said, we're going to be doing another series review today. This particular series has been on my TBR for quite some time now. It is a much talked about dark academia style of novels and theme. I'm sorry, my throat's a little sore, so don't mind me as I sip here and there. By the way, this is a matcha berry tea from T2, the company, and it is phenomenal. I have not seen them make it again, but if you can find it, definitely grab it because it is excellent. That being said, coming back to the series, so this particular author is also known for her writing. She actually self-published initially with this novel series, and then it was picked up and has since become a sensation that people talk about in the dark academia world. And I'm sure you guys have already guessed what I'm talking about, and it is, of course, the Atlas 6 series by Olivia Blake, which you probably also got from the title video screen for this video. I don't know what I'm trying to say, guys. But yes, we will be talking about the Atlas 6. Now, I will say Olivia Blake's writing style is beautiful. Her prose is phenomenal. The way she weaves the story together is very, very interesting. I love the magic system that is involved in this book as well. The idea that people are going to be fighting to join the ranks of the Alexandrian Society, and that they need to go through 2 years of training and then decide whether or not they want to continue doing research for the archives or whether or not they want to go out into the world was quite fascinating. The reason why it becomes dark academia is because the concept is that while there are 6 initial initiates, one of them has to die in order for the archives to continue and for the other 5 to successfully be part of the Alexandrian Society without any damage to their psyche or their health. The archives is basically a collection of information that pertains to various magic systems within the modern world in this advanced time. For example, there's information on naturalism, which is basically the study of life in a sense, life force in a sense, plants, living human beings, things like that. It has a bunch of medicinal cures. It refers to physics and the idea of matter consistently being present but can be changed and rearranged depending on how the atoms are put together to resemble different things, where that the person perceiving it may initially see a knife but all of a sudden see a pile of roses because of the way that the physicists have rearranged the atoms. There is mind reading, telepathy in this. There is emotional understanding, the idea of an empath so strong that they can not only get a read on someone's emotions, but they can actually manipulate the emotions of said of said person in order to completely change the trajectory of their actions, in some cases so aggressively so that it might lead to the person feeling so overwhelmed that they actually choose to kill themselves. So very, very, very interesting concepts that are discussed in this book in terms of magic systems and powers that these various characters has. In particular, this book follows Atlas Blakely, who is the main caretaker of the Alexandrian Society, and he goes out and recruits 6 new initiates to basically be a part of the Alexandrian Society in a competitive nature, studying their magics, getting further inducted into the system, and having more power than they've ever imagined, really being able to hone their gifts, only to find out that one of them has to die in order for them to be successful. Atlas Blakely is not allowed to share this information with the other 6. In terms of the 6 main characters, we have Parissa, who is a mind reader. We have Callum, who is a telepath. We have Nico de Verona and Libby Rhodes, who are both physicists, basically meaning that they can change matter. And then we also have Tristan Kane, who is basically a time traveler. And then we have Reyna, who happens to be a naturalist, where the earth itself speaks to her and she can, just by walking through, revive plants and things like that. So basically, energy source of life, if you will. And then we also have Dalton, who happens to be one of the other caretakers who is working with Atlas Blakely in order to train the new initiates, as well as continuing his own research. We have Ezra Fowler, who happens to be Libby Rhodes' boyfriend, who is not part of the Alexandrian Society, but has a intimate relationship with her and is obviously worried that his girlfriend has just disappeared into this Alexandrian Society without any clear details on where she is or what she is doing. And then we have outside systems that are basically trying to overrun the Alexandrian Society, specifically the Forum, which constitutes a bunch of different powerful magic wielders known as Medians, same as what these characters are considered, Medians, because they are able to manipulate some form of power. And basically, they are trying to break down the Alexandrian Society because they believe knowledge should be available to everyone. And now, of course, take it with a grain of salt, because there's always going to be power hungriness regardless of what system you are involved in. Then outside of that, we also have Tristan Kane's father, who happens to be Tristan Kane's father, who is a power player but a normal person, like who doesn't have magical powers, who is against the Alexandrian Society as well as the initiates. And then we also have Callum Nova's father, who is a very powerful character in this series as well. So you have outside forces that are also trying to break in. And basically the story follows these 6 characters as they go through their journey of being in school, learning more about these secrets, their powers, and finally culminating in essence them having to make a decision as to whether or not they are going to commit the said murder, and whether or not the initiates are actually successfully brought into the Alexandrian Society, or whether it topples. Very intriguing plot, very intriguing story. The only thing is, it is a little bit slow. Some of the characters truly irritate me. For example, Parissa, I cannot stand her. I think she's the most obnoxious, brutish character ever. That being said, I also understand her pain and her disarray, because her primary power is her beauty, and she does use it to manipulate people of both sexes. She uses sex as a way to get them into a vulnerable state and then read their minds, because she is a telepath. Now, that being said, I just found that very cruel in a lot of ways. Like, I don't think it's fair to manipulate people like that. So I just didn't care for her as a character or her scruples. I think she's very haughty, and I understand it comes from a place of depression, and it comes from a place of not understanding self-worth and value and what her interests are, what her powers are. And it is interesting to see that growth pattern throughout her character, but in general, I'm not a fan of her character. And Callum Nova is the empath. I think he was very fascinating to read. Libby Rhodes was a very powerful character. She was very interesting to read, and it's interesting to see her personality just change throughout the entire book. One other character I forgot to mention is Gideon, who is a good friend of Nico de Verona's, who happens to be a dream walker. So he can literally go into any dream realm, any dream world, and manipulate what's happening in the dream and talk to people. The real world assumes he has epilepsy, but that's actually not the case. He happens to be a dream walker, and the first person who truly recognizes that power in him is Nico de Verona. He also becomes very important as the series progresses, and I did really enjoy Gideon's character. Ezra Fowler becomes rather important throughout the series as well, and Atlas Blake himself is a very complex, intriguing character. Now, the one thing I will say is the plot lines get darker and darker, and the story does drag on a little bit, in my humble opinion, particularly in the 3rd book, when all the characters separate and go about facing the real world in different ways. I'm trying to be as vague as possible while also kind of giving an idea of what the books are about, so that if you are interested in reading them, that it's definitely giving an idea of what the vibes are, what the plot might be, without ruining too much. So I'm trying not to say too much, but what I will say is that the first book I think was very intriguing and a lot of fun to read, because you really get into the magic system, you get a feel for what the world is like. They're really delving into their powers, their knowledge. You see like how the characters interact with each other. So this book was a lot of fun for me. I gave this one a 3 stars though. I think as far as Dark Academia goes, it's definitely not my favorite. It was one of those books where, like, if someone asks me, should I read it? I will probably tell them, yes, you should read it. But am I going to go out of my way to recommend this book to people? Probably not. And I will say that's true for the entire series for me. I do think it's an interesting read. Don't get me wrong, as I expressed in everything I've said thus far. But I just feel like there are other Dark Academia stories that hit a little bit better. One thing I will say though is with the fall coming up, I think this is a great fall read. It definitely has those fall vibes. And if you're a Dark Academia person and that is something that you enjoy to read, then I would definitely recommend the Atlas 6. Along with that, I would also recommend We Were Villains. I would also recommend In My Dreams, I Hold a Knife. I would also recommend Donna Tartt's The Secret History. Those are also wonderful Dark Academia vibes, but I will say this is less murder heavy and definitely more magic system heavy and like that academic setting heavy. But overall, I would say there is definitely discovery of human nature, human philosophy, the idea of human growth. If you're someone that's looking for romance, I would say the romance in the series is very confusing, very convoluted. People switch their interests very quickly in this series. The romance scenes are very, very, very short. And I would also say I didn't really feel connected to any of the romances. I thought all of them were a waste of time personally. So it was a very weird way for romance to be introduced into this series. So I did find that very challenging to grasp and appreciate. So if you are looking for a romance of any kind, you're not going to find that in the series, I would say. There is definitely a lot of steamy scenes, especially with Parissa being like keen on using her sexual prowess all the time with her powers. But I would say overall, if you're looking for romance or meaningful relationships, there aren't too many of those. But there is a lot of strong friendships in the book. And I think for me personally, my favorite character was Nico de Verona, because I think he's the most raw, the most real out of all the characters in the series. So in the first book, basically that's what happens. And then all of a sudden, one of the characters goes missing. The second book then continues from that point with them trying to bring this character, by them, I mean the rest of the 5 characters, trying to bring this 6th character back into the fold and trying to understand what happened while continuing their studies and their initiation into the Alexandrian Society. More is revealed about, secret plots that are happening on the sideline. You learn more about nefarious things that may have happened in Alice Blakely's past, things that may have affected how he found himself in a state of power, as well as what happened to the other recruits that were on his initiation team. So that was really interesting. Ezra, I think, has a much more powerful role in this second book as well. So that was really interesting to read. And then some of the characters go through some major personality transitions in this book. And some crazy things have to happen in order for that missing character to return back to the present time. So that was really fun read. I think this book was definitely more storyline heavy and more interesting than the Atlas 6, but again, continues that fall vibe for me. So I think definitely a great fall read. This one, I would give it also a 3 stars. I did enjoy this one more than the Atlas 6, but I wouldn't say it was anything that I would necessarily write home about. So I was already a little hesitant when I went into the Atlas Complex, which is the 3rd and final book in this series. I think the ending wrapped everything up kind of nicely. It is kind of a bittersweet ending, which was nice. Everything isn't wrapped up with a bow. Everything isn't perfect. There is definitely some heartbreak that happens in this book, and I did think that was really interesting. A lot of characters have their savior moment, if you will, and their like moments of realization about their personalities and their goals. There's a lot of definite character reflection that happens in this book. So if you're into that type of vibe, characters kind of understanding themselves better, growing, as characters and understanding the nature of what they're doing a little bit more, then that's definitely seen in this book. But I will say overall, I found this book extremely boring. I really struggled with this book. It took me about 3 days to get through it, so I was able to get through it pretty fast, but there were definitely points where I would find myself falling asleep or zoning out or wanting to go do other things while I was either listening or physically reading this book, because I did find it to be very slow. For that reason and that reason alone, just because I couldn't get into this book the way that I wanted to, I did end up giving this book a 2.5. So I would say overall the series is probably like a 2.8 to 3 for me. It's not a series that I would necessarily write home for, but I will say Olivia Blake's writing is beautiful, and I do see myself reading Master of Death or other books of hers in the future, but probably not for a little bit. Maybe next fall I will pick up those books and read them as well, One for My Enemies as well as Master of Death. But I will say that Olivia Blake's overall writing style, the way that she thinks, the magic systems that she's created are very fascinating. There's a lot of commentary on social politics, what socialism and capitalism have become as time has progressed, the way that the world can be very selfish and very driven by people with those people who are in power. So there's some really interesting societal commentaries in these books as well. But I will say overall, it does take a little bit of patience. It does take a little bit of time because it takes a while for the story to really build up and move forward. And I will say it becomes a little bit darker with each book in passing. So if you're looking for something happy and light, then I would not recommend these books. But I do think if you want something that's that dark academia vibe, but nothing that's too serious or too crazy, an enjoyable, fast-paced read, then I would definitely say these are a fun read. I just personally feel there are some dark academia books out there that are a lot more entertaining to read. On a completely different note, though, I do think aesthetically speaking, these books are stunning. I love having them on my shelf. I'm very excited that I've actually finished them. But these, unfortunately, may be those books that I end up passing on to a happier home in the future. I may try rereading the series much later, probably in 2 years, even maybe a year or two, just to see if I can re-engage into the series. But overall, yeah, 2.8 to 3 star series. I don't think they're terrible. I don't think they're amazing. I'm really excited that I discovered Olivia Blake. I think she's a phenomenal writer. I think the concepts that she put out were really interesting, but for some reason didn't find them as gripping as I would have liked. I hope this helps for those who are looking at a kind of series review or a series wrap up to try to figure out if they want to read the series or not. I hope this kind of gave you a little bit of insight into what the story is and what the dynamics are. If you guys have any further questions specific to this series, if you want any more details, specific spoilers, more information, definitely leave a comment below. I'm happy to respond to any comments, and I look forward to reading them as well. So please do leave any comments that you might have below. And I hope you guys enjoyed this review. Upcoming videos will also include, as we get into spooky season, the October TBR, the September reading wrap up, of course, as well as the book of the month. And then the other one that I wanted to film was potentially a what I recommend for fall, or what's on my fall TBR / winter TBR, which would basically take us all the way through October through like early December for me in terms of what I would want to read. And then December, I usually keep light, holiday, happy, like very much winter vibe books, like Christmas books. But if you are interested in seeing what the fall TBR is and books that I think would be fun to put on the fall TBR, even if they're not on mine for this year, I would be happy to share that. I can also do fall recommendations based on books that I've read in the past that I think would fit perfectly for the season. So if that's something you guys might enjoy, then definitely leave that comment below and I'll get that filmed and posted for you guys. But that's all I have for today. So once again, thank you so much for joining us here at, why do I keep saying us? I think it's because I always think of the cats, and the cats are not here right now. But that being said, thank you for joining me in this corner of the internet on J-Bay's Corner as we talk all things books. If this is your vibe, I put out videos every Wednesday and Sunday, so definitely do consider hitting that subscription button and notification bell if this is your vibes. If not, thank you so much for joining us. And if you ever want to revisit, if something catches your eye, you're always welcome. We're just trying to create a beautiful bookish community here. And I do say we for that because we are all meant to be a part of this community. And I thank every single one of you for your support, your interest, your comments. It's honestly exciting to be able to share this bookish love and passion with all of you. That being said, thank you so much for joining me, and I will catch you guys on the next one. Bye.